you're ready, the stage is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Araya. Let me share my screen. Good morning, all. As Marije said, I'm gonna use the next 10 minutes to briefly discuss our integral mobility approach for spatial development, something we call the Smart Mobility Wheel. It's a fairly new approach, but first I want to go back in time because the Netherlands has a lot of success stories, but this is a picture from my youth, a car-oriented street. For the past decades, urban development in the Netherlands has been focused on the car. And as a child, this is not really what you want. There's no space for playing on the streets, not for meeting your friends. But for our parents, it was ideal. You can park the car at your front door, easy to grab. So it's quite nice. However, we cannot continue this way given the various challenges we face in the Netherlands. We have a shortage of houses, sustainability goals we want to achieve, and we see that it's very difficult to change the behavior of people when they are used to it. Luckily, we also develop new areas, and in those new areas, we are able to steer people's behavior into a more desired way. And in that spatial development, at Goutappel, we see mobility as a crucial element in achieving various spatial or urban development targets. It's not that mobility is a goal on its own, it's a mean by which you can achieve multiple goals, like a high quality of the living environment, a sustainable environment, a social inclusive environment, a healthy living environment. And by handling mobility in a smart and innovative way, we can assure that these goals are met. But we think that it only works when you consider mobility in an integral way. And to assure that we look at mobility at an integral way, we developed our own approach, which is called the Smart Mobility Wheel or the Mobility Wheel. And it consists out of 5 themes: urbanization choices, networks, attractiveness of the public space, hubs and mobility services, and influencing behavior. And the value of this framework is that it ensures that a possible mobility or a possible smart mobility solution is not on its own. It's not about the single measure you take in urban development, but that choices on other teams support that solution, such as the integrated package of mobility measures for urban development. But that is just the framework on its own. It has no use if you do not apply it. We apply this framework in urban development, as I mentioned. And what you see is that there's a classic approach of urban development in the Netherlands, where there's a need for area development and urban developers make a plan, an urban plan or urban program of requirements. And when they are finished, they came to us with questions like, how do we solve the parking solution here? And is the local road network able to handle all the new traffic the urban development generates? And that is not the ideal approach, since quite a few of those problems could be prevented if you include mobility within the first phase of the urban development. That is why more and more often you see this new approach, where mobility is a part of the urban plan. Within the initial phase of the urban development, of making the urban plans, we look at mobility aspects. And we call that MPVE, which roughly translates to Mobility Program of Requirements, in which we state what from a viewpoint of mobility is necessary to include in the urban plan. And we have applied this approach in various cities in the Netherlands. And I have a use case from the city of Zwolle. It's in the middle/eastern part of the Netherlands on the red dot, in which the municipality combined with the owners of various buildings in an area, they said to each other, okay, we want to develop this area. They have both their own interest, but they work together. And they asked urban developers to make a plan. And they asked us to look at the mobility part. And the first theme of our approach is the urbanization choice. It's about where do you build the new homes and which densities, and do you add amenities and shops, restaurants. Now, within this use case, that choice was made for us. This was an area located just above the historic city center, and that's from a mobility viewpoint very ideal, because there are a lot of shops, restaurants within walking and cycling distance. It's just above, you have just to cross the water and you are in the city center. And that makes it possible that people can make short trips and therefore need less dependent on their cars and can cycle and walk more. But to do so, you need the second theme, the networks, the infrastructure. To make the trips, you need suitable walking and cycling paths. And therefore, we said, okay, let's consider the car as a visitor in this area. You are able to get there by a car, but it's not the main modality. The public space is mainly focused on walking and cycling, such that it is possible to walk and cycle to the nearby historic city center. And by having the car not within the area or not dominant within the area, you have less emissions, less noise, it's safer. The various goals of the urban plan are achieved by removing the car from its dominant position. By doing so, we do not need the infrastructure that is currently there, or not in the same space. You can upgrade the public space, so not only providing the fast and direct cycling and walking routes, but also to make them more attractive and thereby positioning them as full alternatives for the car. The fourth theme of our approach is the hubs and mobility services. These are more the innovative and new modern solutions like mobility hubs, mobility as a service, and shared mobility systems. In Zwolle, we suggested to cluster the parking demand of the development in a few hubs, where all the parking of the area is clustered, combined with some local amenities like bicycle repair or a small shop. By doing so, we remove all the car parking from the street, which makes it possible to upgrade the public space and also creates a more attractive environment for cycling and for walking, thereby contributing to the other measures we take. And then fifth and the last theme is influencing behavior. Of course, the other measures also are aimed to influence the behavior of people, stimulate walking and cycling, discourage the use of car, especially for short trips that you are also able to walk or cycle on. And this is mainly about parking norms that state how much parking places you need. And by lowering them, and providing less parking spaces, it becomes less attractive to own a car, or especially own two cars, which is not really necessary in this area given its location just north of the historic city center. And by lowering parking norms, you get more space because you do not need that space for the parked car. And that space that can be used to upgrade the public space, or, for example, add more houses and thereby contributing to the wishes of the municipality to add houses within the municipality. And then you're around. So that's the real we speak of, that various measures can reinforce each other, giving a flying wheel effect. So to conclude, mobility is not a goal on its own. It's a mean by which multiple goals can be achieved. We suggest to look at mobility in an integrated approach, because measures on different themes can reinforce each other to achieve the full potential of a measure. And third, include mobility in early phases of area development to prevent that in the urban plan choices are being made that lead to undesired mobility behavior, which is very difficult to change afterwards. And that was my presentation. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks, Thies, for sharing your insights and showing a little bit on your childhood as well. What you need as a child is something different that parents need. So thank you very much, and explaining a little bit more on your smart mobility wheel from Goudappel, and underscore the importance of recognizing that mobility services has multiple goals, and integrating should be done in an early development stage. The thing is, what I wonder, Ties, do you know, if you're looking in your program, do you also take like society, community issues with it? So like equality, inclusiveness, is this also in the smart mobility wheel?
Yeah, for sure. It's difficult because we have 5 teams, and we see that often a lot of aspects are combined within different teams. But especially the public space is something that society issues and inclusiveness is included in. But it's also about the networks, that we provide networks that are suitable for everyone, not just a fit, healthy person. So in networks, in the public space, it comes back. Yeah.
Thanks, because that's an important issue as well. So thanks. I don't see any questions. So we'll speed up to our next presenter, to Joost, building on integrating approach of mobility. So Joost is our second speaker. He's the Director Transport Service of Capgemini, and he will explain some more on behavior changes and the use of our Dutch scenario STAMP. But Joost can explain it much more better than I do. So Joost, if you're ready.
Yes, I am. Yeah, we'll dive straight into it. Thanks a lot. This showed us already how nice a city can look like when we change the way we deal with mobility. And smart mobility suggests that we transition. We are going to do things in a different way. And we really need a transition. If you look at the Netherlands in 2021, and I'm still a bit shocked by these figures, because everyone knows the Netherlands is quite developed when it comes down to using public transport and using bikes. But if you look at the reality and how people traveled in 2021, out of the close to 170 billion kilometers we traveled, only 8% was done by public transport and 68% was done by car. And we all know that even though most cars, they allow for 4 or 5 people to sit in it, nowadays 7, the average occupation of a car in the Netherlands was 1.4. So we really drive around a lot with cars, and a lot of cars that are not even close to being filled. So the question is, how do we change the split of these modalities? And that's on one side enlarging the group of people who have a choice, and on the other hand, it is to make sure that more people make the dominant choice. And why would they? Well, in the end, it's about sustainability, capacity, and creating space for living. Already 10, 15, 20 years ago, we were concerned about pollution created by mobility. Before the corona crisis hit us, in the Netherlands at least, congestion was the big topic, as both the roads were getting crowded, but public transport was getting crowded as well. And nowadays, as this showed, there's a direct relationship to the space we use for mobility versus using that space in a better way for allowing more people to live in a nice, sustainable, attractive environment. Now, so how can we actually change the way we travel? I see there's 3 clusters. First of all, people can just travel less far, and working at home, for instance, it has made a pretty big impact on the amount of kilometers that people travel, at least for business purposes. The second thing is, well, we can travel at different times. Nowadays, yes, people work a lot from home in the Netherlands, but they all tend to work at home on Wednesdays and Fridays, which means that the Mondays, the Tuesdays, and the Thursdays are more congested than ever. Because when people do go to the office, they tend to go to the office in the very traditional office hours. And that's extremely expensive when you look at efficiently using your mobility system in the country. Well, the third thing is about how we actually travel. So we should travel less, we should travel at different moments, different times, but we also should travel in different ways. And then you get down to this STOMP principle. I won't bother you with the exact translation, but in the end, it's about a pyramid of choices you've got for mobility, where people should more often walk when they can walk. If they can't walk, they should bike rather than using public transport. And if they have to use public transport, it's better than using it than using mobility as a service or shared cars. And mobility as a service, using shared cars is of course better than using private cars. And this has all to do with the impact on using space, using resources, and providing clean, sustainable modes of traveling, right? So we should nudge more upwards in this inverted pyramid. It's not about people who move from always using the car to only walk, because we all know that's not feasible. But if everyone would more often consider a more sustainable choice, that will help us a lot. So the big challenge is how to move the way we move, because that turns out to be a very emotional choice. People's behavior, especially when it comes down to mobility, is very hard to change. And the challenge is like how to make sure that people more often take a sustainable mode for traveling, or using within a journey more sustainable modes in combination with, for instance, using the car. Now, the big challenge there is, I'm just trying to get to the next slide, is we should, the way to do this is to make it much more easy to travel in a sustainable way. So the flexible traveler should more often use hubs, for instance, to transfer from, for instance, using the car on its journey to a big city, to using public transport, and maybe taking a bike or walking the last mile. But this journey isn't seamless and attractive yet at all. Today, it's too much hassle with too many roadblocks and too little attraction. And the first roadblock starts already with popular travel journey planners like Google Maps that are not so easy to use when it comes down to trying to plan for a multimodal journey. Now, what we actually did in the Netherlands was running 2 pilots together with companies and public authorities to really try and see what we can do to change this, the behavior, the way people travel. So the first one, the project was done by the Radboud University. They have a campus, a university site in the middle of Nijmegen. They really suffer from traffic congestion. They had a target to reduce the incoming traffic by cars with at least 20%. And they did all kinds of trials. One of them was to change boldly the educational hours, the rostering, and that really worked well. And the other one was that we did a pilot where we actually created a route planner for people, for their employees, to find alternative multimodal journeys. In the end, what we learned was if people really just try for at least 3 to 6 weeks new ways of traveling, at least 20% of the participants, they immediately stick to the alternative modes. Just by trying them out, they will change their behavior. And 20% was exactly what they targeted, right? A similar pilot we did, and this is, by the way, the multimodal journey planner we developed specifically for this pilot. It just showed people when they keyed in their home address, the destination was preset. They filled in the time they wanted to be at work. And the purple dots you see are all the available hubs where they could transition from car to public transport, just to make sure they leave the car out of Nijmegen. And just by providing these simple tools, we could see that already 20% of the people who tried this, tried the new behavior, in the end stuck to the new way of traveling. Very encouraging. And the same results we got from a pilot done in the TU Delft, where they created different mobility packages. People could try them out for 6 weeks for free. So when you move to the more sustainable mode of traveling and you would leave your car away from Delft, from the campus, the university would pay for their alternative means of traveling. And what we could see again is 20% of the participants stuck to the new way of traveling just by trying it out. But we know you have to try it out for at least 3 to 6 weeks for the new behavior to stick. Long story short, the way we travel, it needs to change. And it needs to change in when we travel, where to we travel, and how we travel. In which it's not about people all switching over to just biking, but everyone making more sustainable choices during the week in their daily life. To make sure that people stick to this new behavior, we need to make it much more easier to travel in sustainable ways. And if you allow people to experience new travel behavior for at least 3 weeks, they warm up to it, and you can see that it has a pretty big chance of success. And that concludes my story.
Well, thanks, Joost, for explaining this. And I think everybody can relate. If you travel and you travel less far and you travel at a different time, and you travel in a different way, and especially using your use cases on how to get a little bit more of a push on your behavior side, it could be done just to travel on a more sustainable way. So thank you, Joost, for showing this to all of us. Just a question to the listeners. If you've got any questions, I will encourage you again to ask them via the chat, because our presenters are well done this morning on timing. So we've got a little bit more time, I think, at the end. Not encouraging the other speakers just to go way beyond their time limits, but Joost, thank you again. It was a nice and easy ride just to explain also on Stomp, because if I do it internationally, I will use your picture because it's always difficult and translate like Stomp from Dutch into English. So that's a usual pyramid as well, because Stomp means something totally different in English. So we have to figure something out.
We have to find a new acronym.
Yeah. So thanks very much. And for having doing an easier time to travel around. That's also the focus of our next speaker. And I would like to call in Aisha, because it explores, your presentation will explore the role of standardization in fostering trust and efficiency in urban mobility, and making it easy to travel has got all to do with this, and data can help us. So Aisha, if you're ready, can you start your presentation?
Sure. And do you see my full presentation right now?
Yeah, but it's starting in the middle, Aisha.
Oh, I'm sorry. And now
yeah, and it shows your comments.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which I don't mind, so I can read with you.
That's also fine, but I will do it only the slideshow. That's maybe better. So let's see, but currently you're only seeing the slides, right?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Aisha. You can start.
Yes, sure. So, well, hi everyone. In the last presentations, we talked about topics such as public space and hubs and their locations. But to make those good decisions about these kind of topics, we need to have insights. And to get those insights, we really need data. And to make data exchange as efficient as possible, we need standardization. So I will take you through the data side today. And I'm Aisha Ujjal, and I work for NTM. So I will first start with, what is NTM? NTM is the Dutch National Access Point for Mobility Data. So we are a relatively quite new organization. We are only 1.5 years old. And the reason why we're established is because of the European Commission. Well, the European Commission decided that every European country should have one national access point where all of the mobility data is accessible and findable. So essentially, we serve as a Wikipedia kind of page where you can find all of the mobility data of one specific country. And in the Netherlands, the processing of data is already quite centralized. So we have different kind of public organizations like NDW, we have a DOVA that are responsible for the public transport data. We have SAPV that's responsible for the parking data. So it's already quite centralized, and that makes it easier for NTM to, in fact, to make this data accessible and findable. But it's still a challenge, and every European state, every member state has its own way of implementing, if they're implementing the national access point. So in the Netherlands, we have a broader approach. We don't only focus on having this access point and only making this data findable and accessible, but we also are focusing on policy ambitions and also on multimodal traveling. And we are also here for a structural and a sustainable solution. So for example, the mobility sector is quite innovative and there's a lot of programs. And after those programs, the negative part of it is that some of these results fade away because they don't have a structural place to keep getting developed. And that's a part where we step in. So an example of this is the mobility as a service standards. We have 3 mobility as a service standards that were developed within a mobility as a service program from the ministry. And after the end date, the ministry was looking for a place that could give a structural place for these standards so they can keep getting developed and don't fade away. So here on the right side, you can see the TOMP, you can see CDSM, and you can see Open Wheels. And these are all very different standards. So the TOMP is a technical interface, and that means that it's the technical part that you need when you want to book a bicycle, when you booked your train ride, for example. CDSM is a very different standard. It's a legal and technical way of working, a standard way of working between cities and mobility providers, so they can exchange data with each other. And Open Wheels is a model contract for mobility providers and mobility as a service platform. So scooters that they want to offer their service at different platforms, they can use this model contract that covers financial and legal aspects. So these are 3 standards that are within this governance structure. And to make this sustainable, we create this governance structure and we created a change advisory board. So we have a board that is responsible for changes within these standards. So they are responsible for evaluating those changes. And after it's evaluated, it needs to go to the strategic board. And the strategic board is responsible for the decision making. And all of these standards are created with public and private parties. So it's reasonable, it's fair that the change advisory board and the strategic committee also has public and private organizations in it. So yeah, the 3 standards I just showed you, 2 of them are focused on the business to business market, but CDSM, City Data Specification for Mobility, is focused on a business to government. So yeah, I thought that one's maybe the most interesting for today. So CDSM, you can see it as a handbook for cities and mobility providers. So a lot of cities want to have insights in the public space, but to have those insights and to make good policy, there needs to be data exchange. And to encourage this, we made a handbook that covers legal but also privacy-proof aspects to improve this data exchange between cities and mobility providers. So it's not only beneficial for cities, but it's also very beneficial for parties because it also reduces operational costs. So the providers don't have a different way of sharing data with each city that was before, but currently with CDSM, there's one standard way where cities can exchange their data in one specific way with the mobility providers. So it reduces some costs for them, but it's also very efficient. This is a very practical example of CDSM. It's a use case store, so any policymaker can open this use case store, and there are very practical examples. For example, you can see yeah, you can see the parking use case for parking spaces or the average usage hours of scooters. And when you open this use case, it's very practical. So you can see a technical and legal advice how to implement this use case. So it gives, it's really helping for those policymakers to have more technical insights, but also to understand how to ask for this information on a privacy-proof way. So we are already at my 3 takeaways. And within these 3 takeaways, one of them is unlocking potential. As I said, standardization doesn't have to mean that it's only be technical. You can also standardize on legal and regulatory complexities. It's very important to unlock all of this potential. The second one is the power of building trust within public and private collaboration. It can be sometimes can be a little bit hard to gain those trust, but it's very important to take this time to build this trust, because by prioritizing this and taking the time for it, you can share a fostering vision together. So the last one suits, is also quite relatable. It's a win-win for all, a win-win for everyone. So in public-private partnerships, most of the time we have a common goal, but there are very different individual interests as well, and these must be recognized. So the common goal is very important, but those individual goals are very important as well, just to keep everyone involved and to keep the motivation high together. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. So we started off with like Ties and then Joost, and your presentation just was an excellent third one. So we've got public spaces, we've got hubs, we need insights, and for these insights, we just need data. This seems like a very easy way to do, but just getting about this public-private cooperation and collaboration is not as easy as it sounds. So we need standardization. Also seems like a no-brainer, and it will help policy making, like decision making, which is Ties is using, which Capgemini is using, and probably Teno as well. So thank you, Aisha. And as I was using like the smart mobility, the wheel of Ties, I will use the Stomper slide of Joost, and I will use your one explaining the governments on data, because we are doing this webinar especially for our international connections, and sometimes the topic of data is not that easy to understand. So thank you very much, just to show us like the use cases and what you can do, and what we are just trying to do in the Netherlands compared to other countries. So thank you very much, Aisha. That's all. I don't see any questions left, but there will be maybe afterwards. So thanks again, Aisha, and we'll go to our already fourth presentation, and it's on. It's a duo presentation. That's a new one in this series of webinars. So Jan Harmen and Edwin, we've got like this new edition. So that's a nice one today. Edwin will be talking about transition from standardization, area development, and Jan Harmen will talk about all his innovative approach on mobility hubs. So Edwin, I would like to give you the floor so you can start, and Jan Harmen, you will get the floor if the slides come up. So Edwin, you can start, please.
Yes, thank you, Marije. Good morning, everyone. I'll keep it short. I'll make especially room for Jan Harmen, because that's really about sharing practical things out in the field, and that's what Zero Way, Zero W is all about. We do a lot of things within the mobility field, but this time I just talk to you in a short time about the sustainable area development and mobility hubs. Let's see. Yes. We have several products on this subject, and I'd like to enlighten just a couple of them. We've developed a toolkit for smart sustainable urbanization. You can find these all on our website, and what we do with all our products that we develop, We use what we call the rows of CRW, and you see it in this image. It's very common way of developing things, in my opinion, anyway. You start with the strategy and the policy, so the foundation of which all products and things are developed. Then you go to program the projects, design them, building and maintenance, and then you monitor and analyze them. And based on those monitoring and analyzing, you start your evaluation and adjust the product. Central, and I very much support Isa in the last presentation on behalf of data. We see in the field of where we operate the data and information, it's a very important part of developing and organizing things. But we also like to encourage the focus on the human capital and organization within those developments. We also have, and that's an introduction for the Intertraffic that will be within a couple of weeks. We also have developed a serious game called Mobipolis. And that game is developed to get more insight into relationships between stakeholders within the development of urbanizations, and especially the effect of mobility interventions on things like congestions and parking requirements is a subject that's really get projects in a big way within the game. But the essence is especially on the focus is especially on working together and feeling the need to cooperate with each other in order to achieve a very reliable and solid urban development. We've got several knowledge bases within CRW. I encourage you to check out our website, and we also have communities on several subjects. And on the subject of mobility hubs, we have a special website for that part alone. It also has a large knowledge base, so you can check us out on mobiliteitshubs.nl. We are also part of the Dutch Metropolitan or Mobility Innovations, in which we aim to get more synergy and joint forces within policymakers and within the public and private part, and within institutions. And especially the upcoming presentation of Jan Harmen from ThanQ is a very great example of public-private joint venture. And they also won a competition that we did last year on developing the most sustainable hubs. Now, within the public and private co-creation, our focus from CRW is in developing a network, designing and building, and especially maintenance, because the focus is within the field a lot on building and designing mobility hubs. But we see, based on experiences that we share on our website within the best practices, is that maintenance is just as vital. So the takeaways are CRW is all about developing knowledge and sharing this knowledge. We do this by a mixture of web-based tools and articles, along with interactive products like the Mobipolis that you can play on Intertraffic, as well as knowledge meetings, and focus on the DMI and connecting professionals within the domain of developing mobility hubs. That was it on my behalf. I'm happy to give the word right now to Jan Harmen from ThanQ.
Okay, thanks a lot, Edwin. In the first place, thank you for giving us the stage here to show our field experience. And I have 6 minutes to tell you in 12 slides what our philosophy is, so I will start along. The first one is that we're, as a private party, 100% convinced that in just a matter of years, energy and mobility will fully merge into one platform fulfilled service. so that in 2030 consumers only will know providers just like you nowadays have your connectivity providers for your mobile phone and your internet connection at home. Consumers will have a provider where they get a subscription that gives them access to the usage of all forms of mobility and all forms of energy. And we always say that goes along with an app where you connect your solar panels onto, where you connect your wall charger, and it also, that same app, that same platform gives you access to the public transport, to the bus. Well, that platform is already there, and we're already fulfilling it for a few years and growing quite rapidly. And can you get a next slide for me, Edwin? And traveling way more and more digital gives you a lot of advantages on digital mobility. It gives you an easier way to get from A to B and to switch from modality form, because you never have to doubt about how to get a ticket. It gives you in one digital platform all the insights of your consumption. And it gives you also ease from employer benefit, because it's quite easy to only pay for the employer part of the mobility usage. You can even do it miles based. And then when you get to serving mobility in a digital platform, it means that a little bit like you have a company mobility card, we track all forms of mobility and we give you insights in your carbon pollution footprint based on the usage of mobility you use. And that means that we offer employers possibilities to steer on making more eco-friendly choices in the mobility behavior of their employees. So when employees are traveling or switching to a last mile modality form that's more eco-friendly, for example, a shared mobility scooter, our platform is able to automatically reward that consumer or that employee to keep on this behavior and to do it also again for the next time. It's a little bit what you also heard in the story from Joost previously. If you then get to the next slide, Edwin, what we learned in the last 6 years since we developed this infrastructure and this private infrastructure is that we built a digital layer, and in our convention, every inhabitant will start his traveling behavior in a digital touch point in the next years. And we integrated, like you heard in the presentation of Isa, we integrated the connections with the mobility transport providers. In the Netherlands, we have the TOMP API as an example for it. So we're already quite far in enabling access to public transport and shared mobility. But what we learned is there's one missing link, and that developing an app of a platform doesn't make the people travel differently. And what's missing there is the full integration with the physical infrastructure. And the physical infrastructure is not in private hands. The physical infrastructure is in public hands. But to fulfill in the right way the switching of modalities, also like you heard a little bit in Ties's first story, you need a perfect integration over all of these three layers. And therefore, we developed a hub philosophy. And if you go to the next slide, Edwin. And in that hub philosophy, from the data perspective, we're looking to the car traveling data perspective, to the public transport data perspective, and also to the locational perspective. And we merge all that layers together and then get the definition of locations, what would be the best switching locations for people to switch from the one to the other modality form. Most oftenly, it's, for example, on the PNR side, just on the outside center of on the outside of a city center. If you then go to the next slide, Edwin, thanks, goes quite well. What we do there is by bringing all forms of mobility together on one hub location, we make it, we generate scale, and that scale makes it automatically profitable. That means that we're not fulfilling all the ways of shared transport, but we're just for providing a location for common shared transport providers in the Netherlands to offer their services there. By just bundling all the requests onto one physical location, you become to an economic profitable location. If you then go to the next slide, Edwin, we developed three sorts of hubs. We have a district hubs, that's more a smaller hub that is orientated in a district of a city, or just in a small town in a more rural area. We developed a city hub, and it's more it's height builded because of a higher square meter price in the city centers. And we developed a Transferium PNR location-based hub that's more widely orientated because there's more space on the outside of the city center. If you then go to the next hub, the next slide, thanks, Edwin. What we're doing at this moment near to Leeuwarden is developing what we call a proeftuin in Dutch, an experience garden in English. We're connecting the urban area from the city to 4 rural districts because you have the shared transport options only available in the city center. Again, from that profitable exploitation part. What we do is connecting the dots and connect 4 what we call wike hubs in the rural areas directly to the urban city area. And by giving the possibility on a shared scooter user on the top side of Leeuwarden to travel on the shared scooter, either you have to stop it in the geofence zone, otherwise you have to select that you're traveling to the hub in Steens and you only can stop the scooter over there. What you do is you make, again, profitable locations for that transportation operators, and you cluster all the requests and all the behavior there on that 4 mobility hub locations. If you go to the next, Edwin, because I'm this is how the district hub look like. They will be placed this spring on that 4 locations. They're fully what we call prefab, so fully demontable, available, and they exist from they're expandable, so you can make them larger or bigger, and you can get them with or without parcel lockers. And there is always a digital traveling information screen with all the GTVS data integrated in this district hub. If you go to the next one, this is how we now with regional governance are developing city hubs. These city hubs are fully privately paid, so they don't need any subsidy from the local governances. And this reference is to the first presentation Ties also gave in Zwolle. And if you then go to the next one, and this is the first private paid Transferium we're developing near to Leeuwarden. And that's where we combine all forms of mobility, including a PNR. And what we do here is we rent parking spots to employers. And they facilitate here that their employees can park in the morning. The barrier opens by license plate, so their employees has a guaranteed parking spot. They can charge their car and they can step here every 4.5 minutes onto the bus and be within 2 bus stops into their office. So we facilitate for employees' behavior that their employees are forced to park outside the city center, but are fully facilitated. And if you want to go with the car to your office, the employer says, well, you can go to, but we're not paying anything and we're not facilitating your parking. But if you're parking over here, there's paid for your parking, you have a guaranteed parking spot, and your full trip from A to B is paid and facilitated. Well, we have some takeaways. To do this, you need some minimal scale. That's where the whole hub philosophy is based on. The most important is that you need a coordination over governmental departments, because in the Netherlands we have gemeentes and we have provinces, and they're always looking to each other. You need a way of system thinking, and you need a cooperation of public and private together. But if you do so, then it's on a good way profitable, and it's also possible for the private sector to cooperate there with the public sector. Well, that was it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jan Harmen, and you did well on timing. And it's an interesting one. So thanks, Edwin. Oh, I see. Do you have a question? Yes, please come in.
Yes, I do have a question. Hello, I'm Vita Bakker from TNO. And I have a question. Are there already similar hubs, maybe somewhere else abroad? And I'm super curious how they are doing.
No, we're not. No, I'm not muted anymore. No, we're now developing. We're already working for this for 4.5, 5 years on this in the north of the Netherlands. We believe that developing an ecosystem like this in, for example, a city of Berlin is not that hard, because you have way enough inhabitants to make a profitable scale. But if you have the key in the rural area, so in the north of the Netherlands, then you also have the key for the rest of Europe. And that's why we're developing our experience garden now in the north of the Netherlands. And the white hubs are fully developed by metal and infrastructure companies here in the north of the Netherlands and will be placed this summer.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So that was the one in Marsum, Jan Harmen, is going to be ready in summer, which you showed from Leeuwarden.
The white hubs will be ready in the summer, and we hope to start building with the transferring location. So the big one in Marsum, hopefully third quarter this year.
Okay, well, which was funny, Jan Harmen, because yesterday or the day before, I traveled in a little town called Lopik, and you smile because that's why I was driving around, and it's a very rural country. And I saw TanQ. I saw TanQ Hub, and that was very interesting to see. And it's an interesting one because there's nothing around charging your electrical car. They've got one station for the whole community there. So it was an interesting one, and it's a district hub, which I think it is. Do you know? Could you explain me some more on this hub on Lopik, because it was really small? How did you choose like this location? Because Leeuwarden seems like scalable, but Lopik is not really scalable. It's a rural country.
Well, our main philosophy is that we believe, then we're running into the questions. We believe that one of the problems we have in the Netherlands is thinking in silos. So a lot of governmental departments are thinking in silos, just only public transport or just only private transport. And what we do is we always work 100% from a data perspective. So we merge, for example, all the Vodafone floating car data, the TomTom data, but also all the people that getting in and outside the bus by the TransLink data. And we merge all of the traveling behavior together to see where are the center points of all of the traveling behavior. And in the past, we developed gas stations. So we're from the fossil origin. But we believe that in a decade, fossil won't be there anymore. So we need to make a fast shift to new ways of thinking. And that's how we believe that from traditional locations, where already we have lots of people and crowd coming over there, and 9 of the 10 times placed on strategic traffic way locations or optimal traffic locations, that there would be a fair chance for a lot of that locations to shift to better mobility hubs. And in our belief, it's a crucial puzzle place to fulfill in, you also heard it in Ties's story, to facilitate the shift of the user.
Yes, thanks, Jan Harmen. I see Eva Blom from the embassy in Sweden has got a question as well. Or no, I don't, no.
Yeah, do you see me? Now you see me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm working for the Dutch embassy in Sweden, in Stockholm, and just a reply to Evita Bakker from TNO. Of course, Sweden is also a large, enormous country compared to the Netherlands, but half of the population, so not so dense. But the equivalent of TNO in Sweden, RISE, Research Institute of Sweden, they are also working with research and has pilot projects going on regarding on the countryside or smaller cities to create mobility hubs. And they are also doing this in collaboration with some gas stations, etc. So there are things going on in other countries as well.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eva, for just giving this comment, because this is a usual and a good one. And I know Peter and Evita, you must know these examples as well from your peers in Sweden. So thanks. And I think we're just getting a little bit stuck in time. So I just want to finish the questions, because otherwise Peter has got no time left for his presentation. And you can take like till at 10 past. So it's going to be an easy one. So thanks again, Edwin, for explaining some more on CROA. Looking forward to the game Mobipolis on Intertraffic. And thank you, Jan Harmen, for explaining like this public-private collaboration, and especially how you can make this profitable and scalable. So that was an interesting part as well. So that's our last speaker, Peter. You are. So and just give you the floor and explain nothing more. Otherwise, we'll still have time shortage. So Peter, you can start. Oh, you're mute. You're muted.
Thank you. Well, good morning to you all. I'm starting up. Probably you'll see the presentation. I'm not yet. Thank you for the speakers, and thank you very much, Jan Harmon, because it's like you said, the silo or the system thinking which is required to solve the problem of the silo thinking. I think this is my presentation focuses on how to look at smart mobility planning, smart mobility solutions like hubs, like MaaS, mobility as a service solutions, being an integral part of the city planning purposes, if you will. And that's basically what my story is about. I've made this with Vita, so I'm very grateful she's here as well. And we'll take the questions afterwards or during the presentations, as long as there's time. We look at cities and those are faced with complex problems. It's not only mobility, it's also reliable and affordable energy, it's accessibility, it's health issues, and they're really faced with some complex problems, of which mobility is part of that. And let's not forget about smart mobility planning. It's there for accessibility, connectivity, and it has big gains to be gotten. It gives you the accessibility to work, to recreational purposes, to do your shopping. It's about efficiency. It's about really your life. But we look at smart mobility as part of the city system, if you will. And therefore, you need also from the city a more integral approach, not only from a technology part of, not only from technology view or a perspective, but also from a governmental perspective. You can't approach a mobility problem just only from your mobility department. And if I say mobility, I also talk about logistics or transportation. I think that's very important. Connectivity is a key, and you have to solve that problem, but we see this as a problem, as an integral problem of the urban challenges cities are facing to get their city sustainable, livable, and accessible for everyone. Because there's also the part of not only the economic side, but also the equity or the well-being side of living in a city. So therefore, you have to manage a lot of complexity, but not only for mobility. You have to manage the complexity. You have also to take into account, as a policymaker, the trade-offs you have to make. You have to make difficult choices, and those are usually painful. Because if you improve the economic outlook of your city by improving connectivity and accessibility through your mobility system, you also have to take into account resilience, health, and traffic safety issues as well, and not in the least the livability issues. Think of a big city that wants to attract, you all know ASML of Eindhoven, that wants to give employment to a lot of people from all over the world, but how they have to live somewhere and they have to get to the job as well. And they don't want to settle in a city that's not really attractive to live in. So you have to take into account from your accessibility or connectivity also the more less tangible sides of things in terms of sustainability and livability effects. And that's where we, I think, come in with the former speakers in mind, because we also talk about data, we also talk about models, and we also talk about frameworks to get to those sustainable and livable cities. Of course, this is technology, but we'll also get into the governmental side of things. But this is about supporting government and policymakers to look at their city from a more integral and interactive perspective, if you will. And of course, if you talk about predictive models, you talk about digital twins. Therefore, you need data. So I'm really grateful for the presentation Aisha gave. And you need an interface or visualization, so everybody understands what you're talking about. What we add to this as TNO is the analytics. If you've got the data and if you've got the models, or if you know what you need in terms of data and models, you can also apply the what-if scenarios, if you like. And the what-if scenarios deal with questions like, I need to grow. Do I, like Zwolle, do I densificate? Do I top off on existing buildings, or do I build in the field next to the river a completely new urban neighborhood? Just a new buildings, new apartments. And what are the effects and the implications, the impact, if you will, on livability, on accessibility, but also on well-being of the current citizens, and equity-like questions. So you need a more integral approach, but usually the models take a lot of time, and you need insights rapidly, and that's what we provide. We combine models and data, and to have an integral approach, and talk with all those silos. So having the silos of urban planning, having the silos of energy, having the of health or mobility, and set them together next to the model and look at it from a more integral perspective, if you will. And behind that are different models and data sets, but I won't get into that now. I will get into that use cases. Think of the models behind these are on health, mobility, on emissions, on fine particles and mobility systems like that of Goudhappel or other ones. And these are just examples where you just have to look at it from an integral perspective. If you want to keep your city like this, Amsterdam, we also do that for Oslo, Eva, or San Diego in Americas, or Singapore in Asia. If you want to keep your city accessible, whether you're not you're a big city or a smaller one, how do you do that? Just setting up a hub or of introducing mass or new modalities won't solve your problems. Usually they create new problems. Think of the parking spaces, electrical scooters take up, and then you have to make new measures. But this example is we need to top on, densificate the city. New buildings need to arise, but where then, and how do I guide and direct my traffic flows within the city? This is what we do. You look at the combined effects or certain densification plans. You look at the combined effects of the now infamous Knip in de Weesperstraat, or the quays and bridges. You can also you can construct a new quay or improve your current bridges, but then you need to redirect your traffic. And that redirection may have a throwback or a worse effect on the current bridges you're redirecting your traffic to. So you make the case worse if you're not sure where to redirect your traffic to. It goes the same for hubs and mass introductions. Of course, you can introduce, like in, I'll give the example of Eindhoven, a new hub. But if you don't take additional measures, or you don't apply the new fitting governance on that, and the parking zones and the parking spaces remain the same, and accessibility to the city center of your fossil fuel card stays the same, the effect will be near to zero of your hub and redirection of traffic flows. So that's basically the point out. This is about how do I introduce in Oslo the zero emission zones for logistics, which is a really relevant example for the Netherlands as well. We need to introduce zero emission zones to get to the Paris Agreement goals of reducing more than 55% of the green gas emissions in city centers by 2030. So Oslo is really looking at from a logistics, but also from a mobility perspective, where do I place my distribution hubs next to the city outskirts, and how do I get then how do I get the stuff into the city and really on a last mile distribution level without the CO2 emissions, without really exerting the current ways and modality forms of travel like electric biking. And luckily for them, they don't have an energy grid problem as much as we do, but there is also an energy transition related to this question. Furthermore, we look at the Schiphol airport. They want to reduce the car trips over there. I'm sure we've all aware that it can, if you take your family to the airport and to wave them off to their holiday destination, or you drive to the airport itself, it can be really busy. But if you look at introducing hubs, you really would like to know the real impact, not only on accessibility, but also on which mode of transport would they prefer for which kind of travel, because there might be a difference in the kind of travel for business purposes than from your holiday purposes as well. So you would like to check out the impact of certain hubs and hub solutions over there, and you don't want your engineering company where you relay this question to take more than 2 months just to check out your field lab results and try again. You would like to stimulate that in a few minutes. Furthermore, and this is what I really want to point out, digital twin is one of the solutions to support policymakers on a municipality, so a local governmental level, but also take into account the stakeholders like the inhabitants and the businesses that are located in these municipalities or these cities or provinces. You also have to take into account what are the effects, and you can apply this kind of technology, but you also have to take into account the governmental effects. Because if you leave this to the governmental silos, you won't get a real solution. And the government is really needed to make the tough choices on the impacts and the scenarios, the what ifs, if you like, you've discussed with all those silos together. And then you have to discuss also next to the advantages it may take and the solutions it may provide, you have to mitigate the harmful outcomes and deployment effects as well. And that's one of the interesting perks of my job. We also look not only at the technical or mobility perspectives, but also on the equity and the well-being perspectives on inhabitants and the companies that are involved in this. So without further ado, I would like to take you to the take-home messages. Good mobility planning is part of an integral planning. It doesn't you can find solutions, but you have to be really aware of the negative effects on the other silos. So please have a look at it from a more interactive and integral perspective. Technology may help you. Predictive twinning and digital twins may help you to do that. Also to support policymakers in their decision maker. But these decision makers have to be really, really aware of the fact there is a job to be done from their side as well. They have to look at from it an integral perspective as well, and they have to decide on this integrally. So there are two takeaways for, yes, it is supportive for your decision making, And the advantage is you can also take into account the participation effects. You can show this to your stakeholders. So there is the public-private cooperation element in this, but you also need to look at this from an integral governmental aspect.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks. Thanks so much for showing us this and show us the takeaways and the importance of adapting an integral approach instead of a silo thinking one. So that's an interesting one. And because we've got no more time left, I hope everybody, we're just on time. I would like to thank everybody for, especially to our speakers, because well done. I think we showed off, like, our international community, how we approach things in the Netherlands. And it was not only showing on how we do our public-private collaboration, but I have to emphasize it is all to do with how we work together as members of Connect, because it was like an aid, I don't know, maybe Ties will know the English word for een ronde presentatie. So you start somewhere and in the end, okay, you don't know either. So thank you again, because it was lovely to work with you. This was the last one in the series of our webinars. So we did traffic management and data, and it showed the importance of data, which again was something we shared today as well. The second one was on EV charging infrastructure and active travel, and this was the last one in the series. It sheds some light on spatial planning, on flexible travel options, on standardization of mass, on how to do your area development and mobility hubs, and last of all, showing the practicalities of digital twins. So I hope everybody was listening. Will join us up at Intertraffic, where all of our members are there, so +5, so not only these companies, but also +5. Again, thanks much for the speakers. I hope you have got a little bit of more of an insight on our cities in the Netherlands, because we showed a lot of use cases. Just to give some one, it was like from Ties from Goudappel, it was smaller, so it's sort of in the middle. Nijmegen and Delft from Joost. Serowe, thank you for joining us on sharing us a little bit more on your toolkit and Mobipolis. ISIS showing us the use cases of and explaining some more on CDSM. Do I pronounce it okay? I hope so. Then Terino showing us Amsterdam Schiphol. And of course, Jan Harme showing us the possibilities of joining together like a public-private collaboration, which is profitable in Leeuwarden. So thank you very much. Don't forget us to join us in Amsterdam. We've got a session as well live at Intertraffic on the 17th of April. You will meet Joost there anyway, I think. I hope. Joost is hopefully saying yes. And the other ones you can meet on our pavilion. So thanks again. Have a lovely Tuesday morning, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.